Sarah Chen stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror at 6:47 a.m. Dark circles, shadowing eyes that had seen 7 hours of sleep, but felt like none. Her fingers traced the soft flesh around her waist, not dramatically overweight, but softer than it used to be, despite 3 gym memberships this year and countless lunch salads that left her ravenous by dinner. The irony wasn't lost on her. At 34, she was a second-generation Chinese-American living in San Francisco, yet she'd spent the last decade chasing Western fitness trends, while her 70-year-old mother maintained the same trim figure she'd had in old Shanghai photos. Her mother, who had never stepped foot in a gym. Sarah's phone buzzed with a meditation app reminder she'd ignore, just like the fitness tracker on her wrist that would soon nag her about steps. She gulped coffee and checked emails before her feet hit the kitchen floor, a morning ritual of artificial urgency that left her nervous system humming like a live wire. Her mother called as Sarah grabbed a protein bar for breakfast. "You sound tired," she said without preamble. "Are you sleeping?" "I got 7 hours," Sarah replied, defensive. The sleep app tracked it. Her mother's skeptical hum carried decades of watching her daughter chase solutions in all the wrong places. That evening, Sarah found herself in her mother's narrow Chinatown apartment, ostensibly dropping off groceries, but really seeking something she couldn't name. Her mother moved through the small kitchen with deliberate slowness, preparing tea with the same ceramic cup she'd used for 30 years. A simple white vessel with hairline cracks that caught the lamplight like silver threads. "You know," her mother said, settling the cup between them, "when I was your age in Shanghai, we had 9 ways of breathing that kept us strong. Not exercise, just breathing, built into the day like brushing teeth." Sarah almost rolled her eyes. Another old country remedy, but something in her mother's stillness made her pause. At 70, her mother's posture remained straight, her breathing so controlled it barely disturbed the steam rising from her tea. Her belly, despite decades of rice-heavy meals, stayed flat not through crunches but through something else entirely. "The first one we did while making tea," her mother continued, demonstrating a circular pour that matched her breathing. 3 counts in, 6 counts out. Your grandmother called it belly root breathing. Every exhale draws the navel to the spine, like this. She placed her hand just below her sternum, showing how each exhale created a gentle wave of abdominal engagement. "But you Americans, you want to suffer first. Gym, crash diet, force. We learned to weave strength into living." Sarah watched her mother's face in the lamplight, remembering suddenly how her grandmother had moved with the same unhurried grace, how meals at their house had felt different, slower, somehow more satisfying despite smaller portions. What were the other 8 ways? Sarah heard herself ask. Her mother's smile was knowing. Some you already know. You just forgot how to see them. That night, lying in her apartment, Sarah tried the tea-pouring breath her mother had shown her. 3 counts in, 6 counts out, engaging her core with each exhale. It felt strange, almost too simple, but for the first time in months, her mind quieted enough to notice her heartbeat slowing, her shoulders dropping away from her ears. In the darkness, she found herself thinking about that cracked ceramic cup, how it had held the same ritual for decades, how her mother's hands had moved with such certainty. As sleep finally came, Sarah wondered what other ancient wisdom she'd been overlooking in her pursuit of modern solutions. If you've ever felt tired, even after a full night of sleep, or frustrated with diets that don't last, tell us in the comments which part of this story feels familiar. And stay with us for the next chapters. The next morning, Sarah woke before her alarm for the first time in months. Not dramatically refreshed, but something felt different, a subtle shift in the quality of her rest, like her nervous system had downshifted just enough to find a lower gear. At the office, she found herself watching her colleague May with new attention. May was one of those effortlessly calm people Sarah had always envied, but never really studied. Born in Beijing, May ate lunch at her desk daily, but never seemed to gain weight, never appeared frantic, despite managing the same impossible deadlines. "How do you do it?" Sarah asked during their afternoon coffee break. "You always seem so balanced." May laughed. "My grandmother would say, I'm still learning. But there are small things. How I step, how I breathe when I carry groceries. My parents taught me to coordinate breath with movement, especially crossing thresholds." She demonstrated, stepping through the office doorway with a subtle exhale that seemed to engage her entire core. "Every doorway is a reset," May explained. "In Chinese architecture, we cross mindfully. Brief abdominal contraction, like organizing yourself before entering new space." Sarah tried it walking to the bathroom, feeling slightly ridiculous, until she noticed how the simple act of coordinating breath with movement made her spine straighten, her pace slow to something more sustainable. That evening, she called her mother. "May showed me the doorway thing," she said. "Is that one of the 9 habits?" "Number 3 and 4, her mother replied. "Stepping breath and threshold breathing, but you're rushing. Come Saturday morning. I'll show you how we shop." Saturday at 7 a.m., Sarah met her mother at the Stockton Street Market. Instead of grabbing a cart and hurrying through aisles, her mother moved through the stalls with deliberate rhythm. Each time she lifted vegetables or bent to examine produce, she exhaled while drawing her belly button inward, transforming mundane tasks into subtle core work. "Number 5, her mother said, demonstrating how she coordinated breath with reaching for cabbage. In China, market shopping was never just shopping. Constant gentle bending, lifting, carrying, always with breath awareness. Sarah copied the movement, surprised by how much more engaged her core felt compared to mindless grocery runs with a cart. "Your grandmother did this every day for 70 years, her mother continued. "No gym membership, just living with intention." They spent 2 hours moving through the market, Sarah's mother teaching her to feel the difference between rushed, shallow breathing and the deeper patterns that naturally engaged her abdominal muscles. By the end, Sarah's core felt pleasantly worked without a single deliberate exercise. "But why did we lose this?" Sarah asked as they walked home, arms full of fresh vegetables. Her mother was quiet for a block. "American culture teaches efficiency over awareness. Rush over rhythm. You learn to fight your body instead of listening to it." That evening, Sarah practiced the market breathing while cleaning her apartment, coordinating sweeps of the broom with exhales that kept her core gently active. It felt strange but not unpleasant, like rediscovering a way of moving she'd once known but forgotten. Her friend Jake called as she was finishing. "You sound different," he said. "More, I don't know. Calm?" Sarah paused, mop in hand. She had been feeling more centered since yesterday, though she'd attributed it to better sleep. Could 2 days of conscious breathing really make such a difference? "I've been learning some breathing techniques from my mom," she said carefully. "Oh no," Jake laughed. "Please tell me you're not going all woo-woo on me. Next you'll be eating bird's nest soup and doing Tai Chi in the park." Sarah felt a flicker of defensiveness, then let it pass with a long exhale that naturally engaged her core. "Maybe I will," she said, surprising herself with how calm she sounded. 3 weeks into practicing her mother's breathing habits, Sarah noticed her jeans fitting differently. Not dramatically, she hadn't lost substantial weight, but something about her posture, her core engagement, had shifted. Her co-workers started commenting on her energy, asking if she'd changed her workout routine. The real change came during her annual physical. Dr. Rodriguez flipped through her lab results with raised eyebrows. "Your cortisol levels are down significantly from last year," he said, "and your resting heart rate has improved. Have you been meditating? New exercise program?" "Just some breathing techniques my mother taught me," Sarah said, feeling oddly defensive about admitting such a simple explanation. Dr. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "Traditional Chinese practices often emphasize parasympathetic nervous system activation. It's actually quite sophisticated from a physiological standpoint. That validation felt unexpectedly important. Sarah had been worried she was placebo-affecting herself into feeling better. Her mother had been slowly introducing the remaining habits. Number 6 involved cooking breath, rhythmic abdominal breathing while stirring soups and chopping vegetables that kept her core engaged during food preparation. Number 7 was mindful eating breath, where each bite coordinated with conscious breathing that aided digestion while maintaining core awareness. The hardest part wasn't learning the techniques, it was defending them to friends who seemed threatened by her changes. "You're becoming one of those health-obsessed people," Jake said during their weekly dinner. "Remember when you used to eat pizza without analyzing the spiritual significance of each bite?" Sarah looked down at her small portion of noodles, eaten slowly with chopsticks that naturally controlled her pace. She wasn't restricting food dramatically, but she was eating with an awareness that made smaller amounts feel satisfying in a way that mindless scarfing never had. "I'm not obsessed," she said quietly. "I'm just tired of fighting my body all the time." "Ah, but you were fine before," Jake insisted. "You just needed more discipline, hit the gym harder, eat less, tough it out." May, who had joined them for dinner, glanced between Sarah and Jake with the careful expression of someone watching a familiar dynamic play out. "Maybe there's more than one way to be healthy," May said diplomatically. "Easy for you to say," Jake shot back. "You're naturally skinny." May's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "My grandmother lived through famine in rural China. We learned to eat every grain of rice with gratitude and attention, not natural, cultural." An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Sarah realized she was automatically doing her breathing patterns, 3 counts in, 6 counts out, and that they were helping her stay calm instead of getting drawn into the argument. Later that week, her mother taught her the 8th habit, sweeping meditation, where household tasks became opportunities for coordinated breath and core work. As Sarah cleaned her apartment with this new awareness, she found herself thinking about Jake's resistance. Part of her missed the simplicity of believing that discipline and willpower were enough. The Chinese approach her mother was teaching required a different kind of commitment, not the dramatic motivation of crash diets, but the steady cultivation of new ways of moving through ordinary moments. "Why does it feel threatening to people when you change?" Sarah asked her mother during their weekly tea ritual. Her mother was quiet for a long moment, hands wrapped around her ceramic cup. "Because it suggests their way isn't the only way, and Americans are invested in the story that you must suffer to improve." "Were you worried when I was struggling?" "Every day," her mother admitted. "But I couldn't force you to slow down. You had to get tired enough of fighting yourself." Sarah looked at the cracked ceramic cup, now familiar as her own coffee mug. Something about its imperfection, its long history of daily use, made her think about sustainability versus intensity. Her mother's habits weren't glamorous or Instagram-worthy, but they'd been working quietly for decades. "What's the 9th habit?" Sarah asked. Her mother smiled. "You'll discover that one when you're ready to really sleep." Would you rather force yourself with willpower or redesign your environment and habits like this character is learning to do? Comment which path makes more sense to you, and share this episode with someone who needs a gentler approach to change. The 9th habit revealed itself during Sarah's worst week at work in months. A major client crisis meant 14-hour days, catered meals at her desk, and the kind of stress that used to send her straight to late-night ice cream binges. But something unexpected happened. Despite the chaos, she found herself automatically maintaining the breathing patterns her mother had taught her, stepping through doorways with conscious exhales, coordinating her breath while reaching for files, even eating the terrible conference room sandwiches with more awareness than she'd ever brought to stress eating. The real test came Thursday night at 11 p.m. when she finally dragged herself home, exhausted and craving her old comfort routine of Netflix and junk food. Instead, she found herself moving toward the kitchen to prepare tea, using her mother's ceramic cup that now lived in her apartment. As the water heated, Sarah practiced the tea pouring breath, 3 counts in, 6 counts out. and realized she wasn't desperately hungry the way she used to be after long work days. The sustained core engagement throughout the day seemed to have regulated something deeper than just her posture. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Want to grab late dinner? I'm stress-eating my way through this work week." 6 months ago, she would have met him for greasy comfort food and complained about their jobs until midnight. Now, the thought of disrupting her emerging sleep routine felt more costly than the social connection was worth. "Rain check? Turning in early," she texted back. "Since when do you choose sleep over complaining about work?" came his immediate reply. Since she'd started experiencing what it felt like to wake up refreshed instead of groggy, Sarah thought but didn't text back. She called her mother instead. "I think I'm ready for the 9th habit," she said. "Ah," her mother said knowingly, belly settling breath. "But first, tell me how your week felt different." Sarah described moving through work stress while maintaining her breathing patterns, how her body felt more stable even when her schedule was chaos. "Good," her mother said. "You're learning that the habits hold you instead of you holding the habits. Now for sleep, lie flat, hands on belly, let your breath move like gentle waves. Not forcing, just settling, like silt in a pond becoming clear." That night, Sarah practiced the belly-settling breath in her bed. Unlike her usual tossing and turning while her mind raced through work problems, the wave-like breathing pattern seemed to activate something deeply calming. Her parasympathetic nervous system engaged, stress hormones dropped, and she slipped into the kind of restorative sleep she hadn't experienced since childhood. She woke naturally before her alarm, feeling genuinely refreshed. Over the following weeks, the 9 habits crystallized into what Sarah started thinking of as continuous core conditioning, maintaining abdominal strength through integrated daily movement rather than isolated gym sessions. The changes were subtle but undeniable. Her clothes fit better. Her energy stayed more consistent throughout the day. Her sleep became reliable in a way that no amount of melatonin or sleep hygiene apps had achieved. But the most surprising shift was internal. She'd stopped fighting her body and started working with it. The constant low-level anxiety about her weight, her energy, her health had quieted to a whisper. "You look different," May observed during lunch. "Like you're actually inhabiting your body instead of dragging it around." That evening, Sarah sat in her mother's kitchen, both of them holding their ceramic cups in comfortable silence. The cracked cup had become her anchor to this slower way of living, a daily reminder that strength could be cultivated gently, consistently, over time. "I have a confession," Sarah said. "I used to think your way was too slow, too small to matter." Her mother smiled. "American culture teaches you to sprint toward health. Chinese culture teaches you to walk steadily for a lifetime. Why didn't you push me to learn this sooner? Because you needed to exhaust the other way first. Now you know the difference between forcing and flowing." 6 months after that first conversation in her mother's kitchen, Sarah found herself facing a choice that crystallized everything she'd learned. Her company offered her a promotion, senior director, significant salary bump, but also the kind of schedule that would obliterate the gentle rhythms she'd been cultivating. The old Sarah would have said yes immediately, then tried to maintain her health through sheer willpower and 5 a.m. gym sessions that she'd inevitably abandon when work got intense. But as she sat with the offer letter, practicing her tea-pouring breath, Sarah realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't just breathing differently, she was living differently. The 9 Chinese habits had rewired her relationship to discipline itself. "It's not about the breathing," she told Dr. Rodriguez during her 6-month follow-up. "It's about designing a life where taking care of myself is easier than not taking care of myself." Her lab results supported the shift. Blood pressure down, cortisol normalized, inflammatory markers improved. Dr. Rodriguez studied the numbers with genuine interest. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," he said. "These are the kinds of improvements I usually see with prescription interventions." The real revelation came that evening as Sarah prepared dinner, moving through her kitchen with the coordinated breath and core awareness that had become second nature. She wasn't following a program or forcing habits. She was simply living in a body that remembered how to be strong without strain. Jake called as she was finishing her meal, eaten slowly from a small bowl that naturally controlled portions. "So I heard about the promotion offer," he said. "Huge congratulations. When do you start?" "I haven't decided yet," Sarah said. "What's to decide? It's everything you've worked for." Sarah looked at her reflection in the kitchen window, seeing someone who moved differently than the woman who'd stared exhaustedly into her bathroom mirror months ago. Not dramatically transformed, but fundamentally more at ease. "I've worked for a lot of things that made me miserable," she said quietly. "Oh no," Jake said. "Please, don't tell me you're going to turn down a promotion for what? Work-life balance. You sound like those wellness people who quit corporate jobs to become yoga instructors." "Maybe those people know something we don't," Sarah replied, surprised by her own calm in the face of his anxiety. After hanging up, she called her mother. "The job would mean going back to the old way," Sarah said. 14-hour days, eating at my desk, no time for the habits that have been keeping me stable. What does your body tell you?" Sarah closed her eyes and checked in with the physical sensations that had become her compass. Her nervous system felt settled, her breathing deep and easy. The thought of returning to her old pace created an immediate tension in her chest, a shallow urgency in her breath that she now recognized as stress signaling. "My body says the promotion would cost more than money could compensate for." "Then you have your answer." That night, practicing her belly-settling breath, Sarah understood the central secret her mother had been leading her toward. The breathing habits weren't about getting a flat stomach or losing weight. They were about developing an internal guidance system that could distinguish between what her mind thought she should want and what her body knew she needed. The next morning, she declined the promotion and negotiated instead for a lateral move with better boundaries and the flexibility to maintain the rhythms that had become essential to her well-being. Her colleagues thought she was crazy. Jake accused her of giving up and settling for less. But Sarah knew the difference now between settling and choosing. She'd spent years forcing her way toward goals that left her exhausted and dissatisfied. Now she was walking steadily toward a version of success that included feeling at home in her own body. "The real discipline," her mother said when Sarah told her about the decision, "is choosing long-term wellness over short-term achievement. Americans have it backwards." 2 years later, Sarah woke naturally at 6:15 a.m. in her new apartment, a smaller place that cost less than her previous rental, allowing her the financial flexibility to prioritize time over money. Her body felt rested in a way that had nothing to do with sleep tracking apps and everything to do with nervous system regulation that had become as automatic as breathing, because it literally was breathing. She moved through her morning routine with the same unhurried precision her mother had always embodied. Tea preparation, with coordinated breath patterns, mindful movement through doorways, gentle core engagement that required no conscious effort because it had become woven into the fabric of how she inhabited space. At work, the lateral position she'd chosen over the promotion, her colleagues often commented on her unusual calm during crisis periods. Sarah had learned to maintain her breathing patterns regardless of external chaos, which kept her core stable and her nervous system regulated, even when project deadlines loomed. "You're like a different person," May said during their afternoon tea break, a ritual they'd instituted when May started learning some of the Chinese habits from Sarah. "Remember when you used to get that panicked look when emails piled up?" Sarah did remember, though it felt like recalling a stranger's life. The woman who had stared exhaustedly into her bathroom mirror, who had cycled through gym memberships and crashed diets, who had measured her worth by her willingness to suffer. She was recognizable, but distant, like seeing old photos of herself in clothes that no longer fit. Her relationship with Jake had evolved too. After months of him expressing concern about her lack of ambition, He'd started asking quieter questions about how she maintained her energy and apparent contentment. Last month, he'd even joined her for a weekend market trip, watching her move through the stalls with the coordinated breath and core awareness her mother had taught her. "I don't get how bending over vegetables counts as exercise," he said, but he'd copied her movements and admitted afterward that his back felt better than it had in weeks. The most significant shift was nearly invisible: the absence of the constant low-level war between Sarah and her own body. She no longer woke up strategizing how to force herself into better habits. Instead, she simply lived within a structure of gentle daily practices that supported her without requiring heroic effort. Her mother, now 72, moved through the world with the same unhurried grace that had initially puzzled Sarah. During their weekly tea ritual, still conducted with the same cracked ceramic cup that had become a bridge between generations, Sarah understood that she was learning not just habits, but a way of being that honored the body's wisdom over the mind's anxieties. "Do you miss it?" her mother asked one evening. "The old way of pushing yourself?" Sarah considered this seriously. Sometimes she did miss the dramatic intensity of crash diets and extreme workout phases, the way suffering had felt like evidence of virtue. But she didn't miss the exhaustion, the constant failure to sustain unsustainable practices, the sense that her body was an adversary to be conquered. "I miss feeling heroic," she admitted. "These habits are so quiet. No one would make a movie about someone breathing their way to health." Her mother laughed. "Heroes in movies have 2-hour adventures. Real transformation takes years and looks like doing small things consistently while everyone around you searches for magic solutions." Later that evening, alone in her apartment, Sarah prepared her nightly tea using the ceramic cup that had traveled from her mother's kitchen to her own. The ritual had become an anchor point, a daily return to the slower rhythms that kept her nervous system regulated and her core naturally engaged. As steam rose from the cup, she thought about the hidden architecture of her days: breath coordinated with movement, awareness woven through ordinary tasks, the gradual cultivation of what exercise physiologists called continuous core conditioning, but what felt simply like living in harmony with her body rather than in spite of it. Her phone buzzed with a text from a college friend visiting San Francisco. "Want to hit that new spin studio tomorrow? I need to sweat out this vacation weight." Sarah smiled, typing back, "How about the farmer's market instead? I know some techniques that might interest you." The response came quickly. "Market shopping as exercise? You really have turned into one of those Zen health people." "Maybe," Sarah replied, and found herself completely at peace with that transformation. Outside her window, the city hummed with its familiar urgency, people rushing toward fitness solutions and productivity hacks, seeking in intensity what could only be found in consistency. Sarah settled into her evening breathing practice, grateful for the cracked ceramic cup and the mother who had known exactly when to offer ancient wisdom, and exactly when to let her daughter discover that the most profound changes often happen so quietly that even the person changing barely notices until she's become someone entirely new. If this story reminded you that real transformation comes from small habits repeated over time, not from overnight fixes, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to start this journey with you in the next story.